Our speaker today is, and most of you or all of you may know him, Lawrence City Councilor Marc Laplante, who was a big supporter of the park here. We always see him here on the 4th of July and other events as well, right? And so he has agreed to be our speaker today. Marc represents District F in South Lawrence. He is also the City Council President, and you have been in office like when, since 2007 or 9?
So we'll go into that, but yeah, I started in 1998.
Oh,
and then
okay.
took 8 years off, took a break, and went back in 2009.
Okay, 2009 to the present now, yeah, okay, all right. Okay, well, all that longevity has made you City Council President now,
It took
right?
a while, but
It
yeah,
took a while. You finally attained City Council President status. Okay, yeah, right. You got to get something for all those years you've done there, right? I mean,
sure.
Okay, and I just want to point out as well that Marc, who is very much into history, as we all are here, right? And these flyers are downstairs, but they'll be on the table here if you'd like one, these brochures. Marc has been involved in what's called the World War I project, okay? And basically, I'll just briefly summarize it for you. 36 Lawrence residents received official recognition from the Lawrence City Council for their deaths in World War I, with a bridge, a park, a street corner, a pool, or a building named after them. And this project, led by City Councilor Marc Laplante, tells their stories. Okay, so again, I will put these here, and if anybody would like one, if they want to learn more about Marc's World War I project, feel free to help yourself. Okay. So today, Marc will be talking to us about the Lawrence City Council and some of the mayors that have served in the city of Lawrence. And just to add to that, some of you may have noticed already, from my own private collection at home, I collect political campaign memorabilia, as most of you know. To go along with Marc's talk, I brought in some Lawrence items from my collection today. So from mayors, and when we used to have aldermen here in Lawrence, okay. So if you didn't get a chance when you're leaving after, in that display case there are some bumper stickers and political campaign buttons for candidates from the mayor's office and the city council who have served here in Lawrence, okay? And by the way, as you may know, Lawrence changed its form of government in the mid-'80s. Prior to that, we had aldermen. I remember when I was growing up here, we had an alderman of health and charities, right? Okay, alderman of engineering, you know, and a few others. And then Lawrence put together a charter review commission, and in the mid-'80s changed its charter to a city councilor and mayor form of government instead of alderman and mayor. Okay, so since the mid-'80s now, we've had city councilors here rather than aldermen, but I'm sure Marc will add some to that as well there when I'm telling you, okay? So, enough of my talking now. I'll turn it over to Marc. So, you're on, Marc.
Thanks, Rich. No, thank you so much. That's awesome, and I appreciate all the work you've been putting into enriching our residents and anybody else who's interested or on all these different topics. So I'm just happy. I'm happy to be here. So thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
So I didn't even know where to start. As I started thinking about this, it almost seemed as though I was going down this road of you know, of recapping like a long career, and I'm thinking usually you do that kind of thing when you're leaving office, and as of right now, I have no intent on leaving the city council. As you said, Rich, I've been elected now 9 times on the council. I do plan on re-election next year. That is probably it is the longest in the history of the city, going back to, well, in the history of the city. I mean, as back as 1853. But I thought I would just start off by just listing some of the people that I served with. I thought that was kind of interesting as I was going through this. And for mayors, I started off serving with Patty Dowling, and then Marcos Devers, and then Willie Lantigua, and then Dan Rivera, and then Kendris Vasquez, and currently with Brian DePena. And then I was thinking back, well, who were the council presidents during that time? And so we had Joe Quarteroni, we had Frank Kibble, Frank Moran, current state rep, Modesto Maldonado, and Kendris Vasquez. And then I went one layer further. I'm thinking to myself, who did I serve with over 18 years? And so here's the list. So I'm going to bore you with the list, but some of these names may or may not sound familiar to you. But there's 35 names that I've served with, in no particular order. Marie Goslin, Mike Canan, Pam Nealon, Franny Kibble, Dominic Armano, Pauline Brown, Joe Quarteroni, Jose Santiago, Gil Frechette, Patrick Blanchett, Marcos Devers, Mike Sullivan, Julia Silverio, Nilka Alvarez Rodriguez, Dan Rivera, Modesto Maldonado, Sandy Almonte, Roger Toomey, Onedo Aquino, Frank Moran, Grizel Silva, Eileen Burnell, Kendris Vasquez, Estela Reyes, Giovanni Rodriguez, David Abdu, Brian DePena, Myra Ortiz, Anna Levy, Maria de la Cruz, Pavel Payano, Jorge Gonzalez, Selena Reyes, and my two most recent ones, Gregory Del Rosario and Stephanie Infante. So there's 35 people that I've served with on the city council. Some of them have passed.
Yes.
Some names may sound familiar to you, and they have passed.
May I add?
You may.
Yeah, Mike Canan, okay?
Yeah.
I grew up on Prospect Hill,
Okay.
28 Thornton Street.
Yeah.
And Mike lived at 27 Thornton Street, so we were neighbors. Yes.
And the story, when I think of Mike Canan did not want to stick around to the city council meetings longer than he had to. And he established very quick. I don't think the city council is where Mike really wanted to be after he got in there. He's like, I really don't know. But he wanted to get out of there. So Mike Canan, I remember this distinctly, he would always second every motion. I think he's got the record for seconding motions, because whenever you're on the council, someone's got to make a motion. And then within like 2 or 3 meetings, we knew Mike was going to be seconding. So no one seconded any motion, and then Mike would second, and then we were off to the races having a debate.
Yeah,
so, but I enjoyed working with all my colleagues, Mike
Yes.
included.
Yeah.
He's no longer with us, is he? Or
No,
is he?
he died in 2006.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. He was, I believe he was a manager at he worked for the city.
Yeah.
He was a manager for the, one of the housing
Yeah,
projects
yeah.
in Lawrence.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
That's right. So it goes back a ways. I just, when I first, I think it's important to just get at some foundation as to how we got here, and I don't have I'm not a very good storyteller necessarily, but I'll give you some insights as to how things may have happened. Maybe some of the players, like Mike, for example. When I first decided to go on the city council, I was working in Washington D.C., and I decided I wanted to come back home. I grew up in Lawrence, went to school in the area, and my parents came here. My grandparents came here back in the turn of the last century. So I have some roots in the city. Not that that's critical by any stretch of the imagination, but there are there. And I wanted to come back. I was doing pretty well in D.C. I worked in Congress. I worked in the House. Worked in the Senate. This lobbying work as well for a New Orleans-based company, an energy company. But I really wanted to come back. I really wanted to contribute. I hope this sounds so trite these days. I really wanted to contribute to my community, and so I wanted to come back. And so I did. And so I decided when I came back, I started working at City Hall for Mary Claire Kennedy. Mary Claire Kennedy was the mayor, and I was a budget analyst. And so I brought a few props with me, just because I'm talking about Mary Claire Kennedy. I brought the last budget before I got into the council. This is 97, 98 Lawrence budget, and just to kind of give you a sense as to how things have changed. So a few more numbers on here. The budget for that year was $148 million. The budget that we just passed for this year was $334 million. So the numbers have gone up. You all can look at that if you want. The numbers have gone up. The votes remain the same, but the numbers have gone up. And it's a little thicker too. There's a little more stuff going on. But one of the things I did, when I was first campaigning, I was impressed with Paul Tsongas. Remember Senator Tsongas?
Yes.
Senator Tsongas. He was running for president. He had a book out at the time. Why I'm having
A call to arms.
A call to arms, exactly. And so I thought I'd put my publisher hat on. I was so impressed. I went to listen to him speak in DC. I was so impressed with him that during my first campaign, I decided I was going to write my own little book. It was called Manufacturing. Here we are, Manufacturing Ideas for Lawrence. So I put this together. I don't know how many ideas I had on here. I haven't looked at it in a long time, but quality of life, communications, and a little note and a little letter. So you pass that around. So when I was campaigning, I campaigned with this as well. And then the first time again I ran, this is back when I was running, I ran in 1997 to get elected into 1998. So they have these things called palm cards. If you're a voter today, if someone's knocking on your door, they're going to give you a palm card, or they're going to give that to you. This is a picture of my parents and me at the reservoir. Man, I had more hair back then.
That's what fatherhood will do to you.
Yeah, no kidding, huh? And just to juxtapose that to what I'm handing out today. I mean, these are the things that I'm handing out today. I brought one of these for everybody, so you can take home a little if you want to get back in touch with me. This is what I'm doing. This is not really a campaign piece. My campaigning next year, but this is an opportunity for me to go around the neighborhood and get my mind, see how people are doing. So I just think it's a fascinating juxtaposition. Anybody, you all can keep one if you want, but obviously I don't want that original back for me. But at the time, in '98, you know, there was. I think the biggest thing is we're looking back on our city. We're looking back to our leaders. When Patty Dowling was first a leader. Is really we've been a city of immigrants since the inception of the city. The names have changed, right? You would have Italian surnames, French surnames. You'd have all these different Irish surnames. It would run the border. Things haven't changed a bit. I mean, we're still going through changes. We're still going through changes dramatically, right? And I remember very distinctly Jose Santiago, and at the time, and this is just facts, this is no opinions are being shared, and sometimes people can miscommunicate on this. I'm going to do my best not to. But the city was different. It was very different. Our Latino population is not as large as it is clearly today, and our council represented that. So on the city council, when I first got on, there were 8, we called them Anglos. I'm still uncomfortable with that, but there were 8 Anglos and 1 Latino. It was Jose Santiago. Jose Santiago was a city council from District C. And here's how things have changed over 25 years. So whenever there was an issue where we wanted to find out, the 8 of us who were non-Latino, wanted to find out how the Latino population would vote on something. And this is a crazy thought, not thinking back on it 25 years later. We would look to Jose, Councilor Santiago, and say, Councilor, what does the Latino population think about, you named the issue, about this issue? And Councilor Santiago would always be, well, we're thinking something like this, but you were putting him on the spot. But he would always come up with some sort of answer. Well, now we're going to fast forward this 25 years. Now the tables are completely reversed. In the 9-member seats of the city council, there are 8 Latinos, and I'm the only Anglo. So the dynamics have changed dramatically. So it's I'm not really getting this from my Latinos, but I kind of get a sense from this. So Mark, so what are the white people thinking about this issue? And as crazy as that sounds now, it was crazy back then because there is no monolithic group of either Latinos or Anglos. There's no monolithic. There's a variety of different opinions from Latinos as there are among the Anglo population today. There's no like, well, on behalf of all the white folks, I really think this is what we're thinking. No, that's a crazy thought, right? It's a crazy thought. So I always say, something, I don't have a handle on this, but here's some thoughts about where some people may be coming from this, but no way can I represent a single group that looks like me. It just doesn't happen. It was crazy. But that's a dynamic of the city, and it's been like that for years. The dynamics have changed over the course of years. So it's one of those things that I think as we look back on 25 years, we look back upon the mayors, clearly that's changed as well, and starting with Dowling and then moving on to, to Devers and Lantigua. Marcos Devers, when that vote took place, he says he was talking to Roy Vass, Chief Ask, and I don't know how these guys were coming up with the conversation. We were at the Puerto Rican flag raising ceremony, 70 years to the Puerto Rican Constitution. It was, I think, yesterday, the anniversary. And Chief Ask came across something, and he's like, I didn't know you were mayor, he says to Marcos Devers. He goes, oh yes, and I'm standing right next to him. He's like, if it wasn't for my good friend Marc Laplante, I wouldn't be mayor today. And Chief Ask like, what are you talking about? He's like, we had a special election. It was Fran Kibble, who was the council president. He wanted to become mayor because Judge Patty Dowling became a judge, and so they needed to fill the rest of that term. And it was pretty. We weren't sure where things were going, so we went around. I never told anybody who I was voting for that interim mayor position, and so because I wanted to listen, I wanted to be as open as possible. I did not want to convey and provide a vote because I really wanted to listen to the candidates, whether it be Marcos Devers or Fran Kibble, talk about what they were going to do and all that stuff, and I wanted to wait until the last minute. I owed that to them, I thought. But everybody else knew where everybody else was voting for, whoever else was voting for. So when it came around for the vote, I paused. The place was packed in the city council chambers. And then I looked to Marcos Devers and I said, Marcos Devers. The entire place exploded because they thought, because of ethnic politics, that because Franny Kibble was an Anglo, that I was going to go vote in that direction. Nothing against Franny Kibble, God bless his soul, he has passed as well. But in listening to both individuals, I felt more comfortable, and I thought that where we should be going under that choice was with Marcos Devers. And Marcos, to this day, has never forgotten that vote. He's got pictures. He reminds everybody. But for him, he was the first Latino mayor in the city of Lawrence. He may be overstating it, but he lays that. He thanks me for that every time. Not every time, but often. Frankly, often when I see him. So that's a Marcos Devers story. The issues haven't changed much. The issues have changed over time. Here's one that started, but only until recently has ended. That doggone police station. That thing has been outdated since the beginning of, the day after they shut the door on it and finished the cornerstone, the thing was outdated. It was like 1960 something. Yeah. And then they had to put a trailer and all that stuff. When I was on council initially, we were trying to get money, and we were going to the Tribune, editorial board. There was Representative Feingold at the time. I forget who else. Representative Teresi, I think, he was state rep. Mayor Dowling. But we went and we pushed, and there was such a need, but it never happened. But it wasn't until this past, I think, 18 months that we finally got the funding, and the groundbreak is going to be taking place, I think, this year for the brand new police station. That took how many years? Like 20, 25, 26 years at least, as far as I can remember, having that thing go forward. Another big issue back years ago that's not as much of an issue now. Remember residency? The whole residency thing? The newspaper, my God, the newspaper would just be hammering that home constantly. And that was the big issue. It's almost, and I'm going to use another hot button issue. Before the Supreme, and that's not even true, I was going to say before the Supreme Court did on the abortion issue, but it's still going to be a hot button issue. The one question you would almost ask any politician at the federal level is, what's your position on abortion? It would be as if that would signal some sort of understanding as to where that person stood, and it was like a bellwether issue, right? Not that everybody's single issue, but that would be like a big one. Back locally, it was residency. What's your position on residency? As a reminder, what residency is, of course, is that if you're going to have a job in the city of Lawrence, you need to be living in the city of Lawrence. Now, I'm not here to go into the pros and cons about whether that should or shouldn't be, whatever. That was a huge issue. To this day, it's much less of an issue. Much. I rarely hear it, although it comes up every now and then. We want to see people from Lawrence getting certain jobs and certain things. So it doesn't bubble up, but nowhere near how it was back in the day. in Mount Vernon, I remember Joe Quarteroni. If you go to Mount Vernon today and you see a stop sign on Mount Vernon, thank Joe Quarteroni, because that guy was unbelievable in putting stop signs almost on every intersection. You cannot go. So I remember all the votes of the stop signs. The other thing we were dealing with back in the day was the fires. We had arsons in the city. Remember the arsons? And then what was the byproduct of the arson? The byproduct of the arsons, we had all these dilapidated buildings that were just shadows of themselves and nothing was happening. Honest to goodness, it was as if every city council meeting we were doing an order to demolish. We were constantly on the council demolishing buildings because of the fires, and it took place over like 4 years. That was like as common as handicapped parking placards are today. Demolition orders were going almost. It was pretty remarkable. Now I've been on the count. That was 4 years on Tower Hill, and now I'm, what's the map on this? 14 years in South Florence East, predominantly. I think in 14 years since I've been on as District F, I think there may have been one demolition order, one maybe, and I don't remember it distinctly, but it's just not happening anymore. It's just not. What I want to share with you as well. Just had a thought. Anyway, we'll come. Schools. Schools were a big issue back then. I was back high schools. So the Gilmet School, the Weatherby School, were big votes back in the late 1990s, and now we're just dealing with the Leahy and the Oliver. So those controversies still remain back then. They remain today. The challenges regarding that, although I think there's far more people willing to go ahead and vote for the new school. I think there was more reticence and hesitancy because of tax issues and all the other stuff that we're dealing with back in the late 1990s, dealing with schools and what the impacts are. I mean, things have changed a little bit. I brought the newspaper. The impacts on whether you're a mayor or whether you are a city councilor, any elected officials. Back when I was first on the council back in the late 1990s, the Eagle Tribune was the newspaper, and it had an impact. I mean, if you wanted to run for election, you had to at least buy an ad in the newspaper, because you were concerned that if you didn't buy an ad in the newspaper, that they may not like you so much, and their editorials and the slander. So almost everybody was buying ads in the newspaper, in the Eagle Tribune, mayors or city councilors, and we'd always say thank you ads as well. Maybe we should say thank yous. And to me, it was always a little weird. I'm buying a thank you ad prior to the election, just hoping to God that I'm thanking people for voting for me, but you don't really know for sure. But because of the lag time, you had to buy that before you knew the results. I brought this with me as well. Back before 2000, they did this series on riches, and just to give you an idea, you can strum through this. There's a lot of stuff in here, but it's more show and tell. Look how big the paper was back then, and then so let's juxtapose that again to today. Here's a real concern we should all have. We should all have this concern. We are now in a big difference. Social media. There was no Facebook back in the 1990s. There was no Twitter. There was none of that. It was the newspaper they were getting out. Today, the newspaper has physically shrunk. There was an article in yesterday's paper, but it wasn't a paper because the Tribune doesn't print a newspaper on Tuesdays and Saturdays, so it's online. And so the impact of the newspaper, like almost any newspaper, not just the Tribune, has really been reduced dramatically. And so that's a big change in 25 years. And so why do I say this should concern us? Love or hate the Tribune, at least you had one place where people would get their news. At least one place, right? So we're all knowing what everybody's got the same stuff. Today, you're just going on your phone, on your device, and no one's vetting it. At least there was an editor that was at least editing, at least at some point. Now you're getting your news from all over. There is no editor. It's just people talking about whatever they want to talk about, and there's all these half-truths or mistruths or whatever. and we're all not on the same page, right, on stuff. So, and that's why it's a concern, because love or hate the Tribune, they would hold our feet to the fire. I mean, as an elected official, today, who's getting the news? There was no article. Where's my budget? Who's got my budget? We passed a $334 million budget. There was not one blip about it in the Eagle Tribune. $334 million budget, not an article, nothing in the newspaper from Lawrence. It puts pressure on us. If you're going to be a responsible legislator or a mayor or a city council today or any official, we're not, the news is not getting out. It's more important that we got good people in office, because who are taking their job seriously, who's not playing to the media necessarily, or not playing to, oh my God, I'm afraid about a bad article, but saying this is the right thing to do. Because right now we don't have that fourth estate making sure that a lot of this stuff is covered, because for a variety of reasons you all can figure out, we could probably spend a whole time on that. So anyway, that's a concern. Let me just say this about today's city council. I really think that we do have citizen legislators. And for the mayor's office as well, Brian DePena, a citizen, a businessman. Most of the people are not politicians. They are not. My colleagues they're politicians only because they got elected. They are not politicians. These are people who typically are working and doing whatever, and they do their evening jobs. Most of these mayors that have come in, most of them, not all of them, most of them are not politicians either. At least DePena is not. He's a businessman, right? But I just wanted to give a sense that we have where we are today is more citizen legislators. I was going through some stuff as well. So one of the things I would do back in the day is I would do this newsletter. When I first got elected, I brought a copy of a newsletter. Oh, and I don't want to forget my tie. This is my mom. Got me this tie when I was first on the city council. This is a Tower Hill, District D. Now I'm in District F, of course, and so she commissioned this tie. Pardon?
I love it.
Oh, thank you so much. Right.
That's pretty creative.
She was amazing. Both my parents have passed, but they one of those pieces you'll see a picture. If it wasn't for my dad and the good name and the good reputation that my dad and my mom had, it would have been harder for me to get elected. But some things don't change. It's still about knocking on doors. It's really all about connecting. Being an elected official, whether you're on the city council or whether you are president of the United States, it's all about connecting with people and making sure that you may not always agree, but making sure they feel like that you're listening and feel like that there's a connection there. And so you can pass this around. This is what I don't think anybody else has ever done this. What's fascinating as well is I would do these newsletters. I would do it quarterly, and then I would mail them out. And mail back then is still expensive, and it's expensive today. But I would get corporate sponsors, and maybe some of these sponsors may or may not be around. You can pass that around just to kind of give you a sense. And then one of my city council Tower Hill ones. Now, unfortunately, after I left, they split Tower Hill in half, so there really is no Tower Hill seat. It's really between C and D, and it's cut halfway. And that was because of the Voting Rights Act decision that was made in 2002. Listen, I can go on, and we're getting near. I wanted it at least at 12:40. Anybody can interrupt, but anything hot that you're thinking about that you say, "Oh my God, I need to." I have a question. You don't have to. I can keep going. But if you got a question or something.
Well, Mark, you want to tell us, like, what's your day job?
So I work for Mass DEP, and I'm glad that you asked. I really have a very strong distinction between what I do for my day job. I have to excuse myself from all things Lawrence, working for the Commonwealth, and what I do in my evening. I call this a hobby, but it's frankly a labor of love, right?
Yeah.
It's different, and so, but again, I have to bifurcate my day job as well. So if there's anything that deals with DEP, I have to stay away from that. So the only times you'll see me abstaining from a vote is if it has something to do with the agency that I work for that deals with the Commonwealth. And the same thing on the other side. If I'm doing enforcement work for the Commonwealth and there's something coming for Lawrence or they're looking for information on Lawrence, I run away from that. I say I can't get involved, and people fill in for me so I don't have to deal with Lawrence issues. Let me also talk about, I see Tom Spitaleri here, so who's with LCAT. You know, back in the day, in the city council chambers, we used to, LCAT was been filming, not LCAT, but whatever, we've been filming the city council meetings since forever, as long as I can remember. We used to have a small television set over there, and it was, Lydia, you spoke at many of these things, right? So it was facing the crowd, and we really couldn't see ourselves on the monitor. And it was almost like black and white, and there was no sophistication, and it was all VHS tapes, and it was just, I still think we have some of those VHS tapes, but we don't have anything to play it on. The tapes are there, but no equipment, right? So, but hopefully we're going to improve the system as well. Let me do some, hot takes on mayors, right? I guess that's going to be kind of fun. Dowling. Pat Dowling. So that's when I finish with this, you're gonna say, did you get along with any mayors? So with Pat Dowling, my mom, I love my mom. There's a picture of her in this card right here. My mom and my dad were so important to me. My parents were military. My dad was a career military guy, and so the military was big in my family. 3 of my brothers were in the military. I tried to get in the military, unsuccessful, and ROTC, excuse me. When I was in college. Long story, not going to go into all of that detail. But my mom went to an event, and Candidate Dowling or Mayor Dowling was walking around during the national anthem. My mom was so upset that a person, now I forget whether she was already in the mayor or campaigning, would not stand in attention when the national anthem was played. So she took a pen and wrote a letter to Patty Dowling saying how disappointed, how she couldn't trust her, and all these things. I never knew that my mom did this, because here I am, either in office or running for office, and I need to work with this mayor. Until she said she sent it, after she sent it, and I'm thinking, what are you doing? You can't be sending the mayor of the city. I have to work with this woman on stuff, and it just, you couldn't. So anyway, Patty Dowling. That's like my strongest memory. We did get along, but I think that you need to remember where I was coming from. I was a young 33-year-old guy coming from Washington D.C., and I was to a certain extent I still am today, but I'm very. This has got to be done this way, and this way. I saw it in the U.S. Senate. I saw what was going on in the House of Representatives. And so there was a real formality and I was very wired into the national scene and how things were imaged. And sometimes I would do things that may have grated against Mayor Dowling's sensibilities when I went to a budget debate and I brought reams upon reams on laws. I bought all these books on laws as props, and you couldn't see me. And I said, we're going to be adding more laws? Look at all the laws that we have now. We got these laws and this laws. And look at the budget. We have the state budget and the federal. I brought all these books in. And I just think she thought that I was showboating and so there was a little bit of that going on.
Mark, excuse me.
Yeah.
Since you brought up the
there we go.
we have this at the front desk. Thought you might like to see
A
it.
stack of laws.
Am I in this picture?
Well, you're not. I don't think you
No,
are.
because I don't think I was invited.
But since you're talking about Mayor Dowling.
Oh, that's great. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, we'll pass it around. Yeah.
There we go. That's awesome. Oh, that's a great share.
Yeah.
Marcos Devers. I already spoke a little bit about Marcos. We didn't serve for a long time on there. Mike Sullivan won the election. I should add Mike Sullivan. When Mike Sullivan won that day, because Marcos Devers was interim, could only serve until the election, and then Mike Sullivan got in. So I guess I did serve with Mike for 2 months, a month and a half or something before my term ended. With Marcos Devers, I don't remember there wasn't too much of a time there, and I do regret saying so. So when I went to Mike Sullivan's office, I remember, who the hell am I? I said to Mike Sullivan, I hope you do well, Mayor, and I hope you treat folks well. And I don't know why I said that, maybe because there was something going on before, and he just looked at me like, of course I'm going to treat people, what are you thinking? I just thought I overstepped my bounds, so there wasn't a lot of interaction with Mike Sullivan, and today, by the way, Mike Sullivan and I are tremendously good friends, and he did, I thought, a very good job reconciling folks when he was mayor for 8 years. Lantigua, William Lantigua. Now, there's no surprises here. Mayor Lantigua and I did not see eye to eye for 4 years. We had a significant difference of opinion. The story that I have for Mayor Lantigua is a couple of things, I guess. And we've gotten along better since, so to a certain extent, we've patched things up. He would not meet with me. He would not meet with me. He thought I was a pain in the side. He would not meet with me. And so what I decided to do is I was just going to send him letters. I want to meet with you. I want to meet with you. And I would send him a letter. I'd email, I'd send him a letter of postal service, and I would get nothing. He would not meet with me, would not meet with me. So what happened? But I was such a pain in his butt that on my birthday, because he sent everybody a birthday card, on my birthday he sent his happy birthday card, and inside it was a $1 bill. Apparently, when you give somebody a $1 bill, I didn't know this until afterwards, that is a sign of disrespect. Like, you're lower than life to me. You're worth just $1. So he was essentially giving me the business through the birthday card that I got. Well, needless to say, it made the front page of the Boston Globe within a week. On the dollar. The dollar bill. And you can look that up to this day. Dan Rivera. Dan Rivera, so here's a guy that I served with on the council. And sharp, smart, I liked him a lot. And having come from a place where I was not giving any kind of discussions with Lantigua, being with Rivera was a complete 180. A complete 180, where I was invited to the mayor's office. He'd asked me for some advice on stuff. We were very friendly and friends, and the relationships were dramatically different with Rivera. Story about Rivera. So now I don't want to, because he's still around, so we have to be careful about what the stories are. But with Rivera, for the politics of stuff, I guess I'm a pain in the butt to almost every mayor. I don't care for more housing stuff. I think we have too much of it. At this point, and then on some of the personnel stuff, I'm kind of a stickler on making sure people get the right qualifications and stuff. And there was a vote that I had to take on a friend of ours who wanted to be city attorney. And it was a personal friend of mine that I voted against her. Not voted against her, but voted for somebody else. I think she would have done a good job, but somebody else I thought was more qualified and do better. He was about to write me off completely. And it took a while for that to come back. And we did come back. And when there was a motion for no confidence against Dan Rivera that was tabled, one day I came and I said I want to take this off the table, and I did, and withdrew it. Rivera, to this day, he called me up that night in a moment of tears because that meant so much to me, Mark. Thank you for taking it. Because I thought that the whole motion of no confidence was unfair to him, but I did take that off, and there's so many memories with Dan Rivera, but that's one. How are we doing for time? Kendris Vasquez. Kendris, I think just on a positive stuff, when he's the acting mayor for a while, he wasn't going to run for mayor. Then he decided he was going to run for mayor. That was very unsettling for me. We ran I was the vice president. He was the president. We got along very well in that role. But when he decided he was going to, it was unsettling. In all candor, I didn't feel comfortable with that decision. But early on, he invited me and let me know what was going on. He said to me, Mark, he goes, listen, I'm acting mayor right now. Who knows what's going on? And you need to know what's happening, because if I go, you're the mayor, and I need you to be aware of what's happening. So to Kendris, to Mayor Vasquez credit, he made sure he had that kind of thought process in mind, that he knew there was a succession and didn't want the city to be put in harm's way in the off chance that something were to happen to him. And I thought that was very, very, very positive. And now we're currently with Mayor Brian DePena, and that the relationship there is strong and it's good. It's a partnership. we do talk a lot to him and his key staff on things, and so it's still very early, but I think things are very promising. I think he understands that I'm not a yes vote for him on all things, but when I can't support him, I will be there, and when I can't support him, it's not about him, but it's on the issue. And I think our relationship is maturing as we go along. This is still very, very new. But I feel that he's got a promising opportunity here to really shape our city. So I got nothing but good things to say about Mayor DePena, and then we're just going to take it from there. So that's my quick. Is that quick? Probably not quick. That was my down and dirty on at least the mayors I served with.
Okay, very good, very interesting. All right, so what do we have, about 1 o'clock? All right, so yeah, we can just open it up to general questions now from Mark. Any secrets anybody wants to know about City Hall? Maybe that Mark can shed some light on? Deep dark secrets?
Well, those are for Tom Spitaleri with the ghost. Those are the deep
right,
secrets. That's a whole different talk. Cool stuff. I mean, just to touch upon our system of government, which I find fascinating. We were incorporated, I think, in 1848, and for 4 or 5 years, we were a town government. We had selectmen in the city of Lawrence, right? But then 1853, we transitioned to the mayor style of government, and then we had a mayor, and then we had aldermen, right? And we also had a city council. So you had like this aldermanic, and then you had a city council, almost like a Senate and a House of Representatives. It was two bicameral, and the mayor was selected from the aldermen. In 1911, that got switched over again to the form that some of you are more familiar with, the aldermanic style of government. Now there was no city council. The city council back early was made of like 25 people, and there were, I think, 4 or 5 aldermen. And then in 1911, it got switched to 4 or 5 aldermen, and one of them was the mayor, and there was no city council. So they would vote for everything among themselves until 83. The city ratified 86, where we have 9 city councilors and a mayor. And so that's the big change over time.
And the length of service, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Like when we started with Charles Storrow in 1853, the mayoral term was 1 year. You know, just one. How much can you get done like in 1 year?
That's right. And then went to 2 years
and
at some point, right? And now we get down to 4,
and now we're up to 4, right? Yes.
So there's a little. So it's great that local government is that responsive, but you couldn't do, for obvious reasons, we'd be campaigning like all the time, raising money all the time. It would be just crazy. So at least just some breath, right? And one of the things I think about people, and I think you really talk about this, in our style of government today, we're looked upon, we are elected for our judgment. We represent, either their council, we're council, not so much the mayor, we represent 90,000, 89,000 people in the city. People have daytime jobs, people have home issues. There's a reason why this form of government is, so it's incumbent upon the city councilors to know what the issues are and then to do it. Now, that doesn't mean we ignore people by no stretch. There's different ways to get information. So we should be listening, we should be getting emails and phone calls and texts and whatever we're getting. We should be getting those and listening to public hearings. That should be part of our decision making, but it shouldn't be the end all or be all. Because if it was, we'd be a town and we'd be meeting a selectman, and then everybody would be opened up by warrants on a town hall meeting. But it's not that. So in Lawrence, we have a responsibility of using our best judgment based on our education and experience and input from people to make decisions. And so when I hear people saying, we don't let the people get involved in this and we don't have their voices, well, we do, but there's a limit to that as well. We should be listening and we should be inputting. But if we wanted the other style of we just had, 51% said yes, then we should be going back to the town manager and the selectmen. We should be doing that. But it gets too unwieldy. You saw the budget, right? $334 million of stuff. I mean, it's hard. It's hard for a regular city council to get their minds wrapped around what $334 million gets you today. And to ask people to figure that out, it gets even more challenging.
How many pages is that budget?
Well, good news is I can get you an answer real quick.
There's a reason why I'm saying that.
135 today.
That's 135 pages.
And-
Imagine what a state budget looks like, or a federal budget.
Well, wait a second. Why is that 135 in the back of 100? That can't be right. 100, 150, yeah. 150 something, but maybe that's
Does it
just,
change the number of pages every
maybe
year?
not.
Because
So the number's the same, just the budget numbers get bigger. The pages are the same as the budget number.
But imagine if that's a state budget, everybody, or a federal budget,
Sure.
how thick that book would be.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, we like to think of ourselves as being informed and making all these decisions. It's hard, and when you have citizen legislators like we're part of right now, it's a challenge, and it has to be a good working relationship between the mayor and the city council. We need to rely on the department heads to give us new information, the budget director to give us good information. We don't have the staff really to do truth searches on stuff. We rely on the same administration to give us the numbers, and we have to dig. And I think for the most part, I can say this: department heads are professionals in the city. I mean, especially the budget director, and we will get the numbers, even if it doesn't play well with what the mayor's trying to accomplish. I think we're getting straight numbers.
And Mark, just to wrap it up, I guess
Yeah.
now, so how do you find, like, I know serving on the city council, it's considered a part-time job.
Yeah.
But, like working full-time, let's say, your day job, and then serving on the city council, do you find, like, how much of a balancing act does it involve,
No, balancing is a very good word because it requires that. So the council stuff, and I was talking to someone just the other day about about being an elected official. It's a lot of work if you're doing it right. And frankly, I could spend like all day, every day doing this stuff. I mean, a city like Lawrence, with the issues that we're facing, good and bad, and the demands that are put us by the populations who think that we have all the answers on everything, there's a lot, and the expectation is high. And so we could spend a lot of time doing it, but we have to. There's a reason why in 1983, when the voters decided they wanted to have this style of government, they didn't want full-time legislators, they wanted part-time legislators, because they want us to do our normal job, and they want us to be citizen legislators and not professionals at this. And I think back in, because it is a part-time gig, the voters wanted us to rely more on the mayor and more on the administration, in which we are. And so while we are checks and balances, there's limits to how much we can do the checks and balances because of time. Yeah.
What do you think about, and I don't mean this across the Commonwealth, but cities of certain sizes, without getting locally too political, having full-time city councilors and a full-time city council. I know you're the president, but take you out of the equation. A full-time city council president, kind of like Boston has.
So Boston, I believe, has full-time city council
They do.
and a full-time, everything is full-time over there.
Boston, Springfield, all those bigger cities. And Lawrence is a big city. It's small land-wise, but it's big people-wise.
Yeah, I think it's the 7th largest population-wise in the Commonwealth. I need to give that more thought. I hate to, I want to sound like a
There's
lawyer
pros and
here.
cons, yeah.
And I'm going to give my lawyerly answer, which is I can see both sides of this as to why somebody would think it's a good idea to make the city council full-time. I think city councilors, many would think it's a great idea. I think many would love to be able to do this kind of thing all the time and get away from whatever their other job is, or if they're retired, whatever. I mean, so. But I think we can't lose sight of what the voters wanted and the dynamic that they have. And yeah, the council's not going to be a perfect end-all or be-all, but it should be a good place. It should be representative. We should be listening, right? And then we got to bring those back. So I don't have a solid opinion on that because I think there's just too much going on there. And today we've got issues with the school committee. The state has a takeover, and one of the hottest issue right now is the school committee. And then, is the council going to be involved at all? And if so, in what way? And that would require a charter change, if anything were to change on that.
But I know it's required a charter change. I was just wondering what your thoughts on it.
Yeah.
For a city of this size with issues of the magnitude that you have to deal with.
You know,
You and the other nine.
it's, you know, yeah, I'm gonna demur on that question. I think it's, in the short amount of time we have here, there's just a lot of the stuff to have to consider and talk about. You know, are we getting good quality people serving us on the city council? Would money make a difference if you got more money? Maybe we have more city councilors and with a smaller piece. Because right now I'm representing about what 14,000 people, something like that. And we all have the same amount as district councilors, of course, at large or at the entire city. Should we have more city councilors, smaller areas? Should it be all at large? Should it be doing that? Maybe we don't need a full-time city council. If you have a full-time city councilor, yeah, you know, the question now is, how is that relationship going to be with the mayor? Is it going to be positive? Is there going to be more conflict, less conflict? Do we like conflict? A story that I have for the little bit of time we have left. I worked in the U.S. Senate for a while. The guy that I worked for was Malcolm Walla, and he was senator from Wyoming. And whenever I had the opportunity, I would always volunteer to drive the senator. I found it to be a fascinating opportunity to sit with one of the top powerful people in the entire country, one of the most exclusive clubs of 100, and be able to listen and talk and engage. So one of the conversations I had with the U.S. Senator was, I said to him, I saw he took a vote. This is during the Clinton administration. He took a vote on somebody, I forget who it was. I go, Senator, I said, I saw that you voted for this individual. It was like 98-2 or something like that. Maybe you voted for it. The vote was off from what I expected. I go, why did you vote like that? He goes, Mark, in the United States Senate, the vote that scares me the most are the unanimous votes. I go, why is that, Senator? He goes, because if you have a unanimous vote, I'm always thinking to myself, was the other side considered? And it's almost never you're going to get anything unanimous at all in this country. And to think that 100 people voted in a certain way tells me, did we think about the other side? And that's always my concern. So when I talk to city councilors today, every now and then I'll have a chance to talk like that with them, and would they vote on a 7-2 or an 8-1, I go, good for you. If you're on that one, good for you. I didn't vote with you, but good for you for sticking up and being that one vote, because you thought about the other side, and that's really important. And the last thing here's my last plug. It's history. And Rich, you can appreciate this, right?
Okay, yep.
I think you can be a good elected official without knowing history. I think you can be a good official. You can understand the budget. You can respond and with the constituents concerned. You can make the right phone call. You can get that pothole fixed. You can do whatever you can do. You can be a good citizen legislator, and you can be a good city councilor. But what I think separates you from being a good or very good to a superior or a great leader is understanding our history and understanding how we got here today, and realizing that the votes we're taking now in 2022 are not much different than the votes that we took back in 1998, or perhaps the votes in 1948, or 1928, or 1878. In many respects, many votes, things change, of course, roads, asphalt, things like that change. Technology changes. But when you're voting for people and stuff, if you understand our history, fire departments, police, crime, some things really remain constant. If you know our history, you're going to be even more effective because you realize that it's going to be cyclical. So that's my plug about individuals who serve. If we can have more folks who know more about our history, we will be better served. Better served. Doesn't mean that we're going to do a bad job or not, but better served.
Good, excellent. Yeah. Good. Anything else for Mark? Okay, well, thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Elton.
Yes, we appreciate the time that you took out of your schedule
Thank you.
to
Can I have a
share
cookie
your,
now?
yeah, I'll take two of them.
They look good.